Hello, thank you for joining us today. My name is Kristin, and I'm from YouthTALK. YouthTALK is a CMHA program that is for youth by youth across Guelph, Wellington-Dufferin regions, all about raising awareness and educating peers about mental health and wellness and youth engagement. We want to thank Big Brothers Big Sisters and their Youth Action Committee for partnering up with us to have us host a Be Together Talk series session with the Beehive Youth Hub in Fergus. Both organizations and youth groups are passionate about having youth-led projects to promote positive mental health. This week's session is all about being supportive. Many of us struggle, regardless if it's an illness or not, and we want to make sure we are being supportive and caring friends. You will learn about warning flags and signs that someone is struggling, be able to notice those signs when you see it in others, and then be given some tips as to how to help connect them with someone for more help. Even if you don't know someone currently struggling with mental health concerns, you will know somebody in your lifetime, so this information is key to have regardless. So I'm going to hand it over to our guest speaker now, which some of you may already know. Jessica Schumacher works for Canadian Mental Health Association, specifically with youth engagement and education. She is also the coordinator of the Youth Talk program I mentioned earlier that I am a part of. Jessica has taken training for mental health and suicide prevention and is also a Safe Talk and Ask trainer herself. Thanks for being here and talking to the youth.
Great. Thanks so much, Kristen, for that introduction. And hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here. Kristen already mentioned who I am and what I do, so let's just jump right into it. First, I'm going to start off with a question. So I'd like you to think about this answer in your head. What percent of the population do you think is affected by mental health? Just think about that for a little bit. What percent of the population is affected by mental health? Okay, you got your answer? All right, if you said 100%, you'd be right. 100% of the population has mental health. If you have a body, you have physical health. If you have a brain, you have mental health. And that's the way that we need to be talking about it. We didn't say mental illness, right? And that is a different percent. So that is 1 in 5. So 20% of Canadians will experience a mental illness at some point in their lives. And as Kristen had mentioned, if you don't know someone who might be struggling or dealing with an illness right now, you will at some point in your lives. So this information is so important, and we need to learn now how to be kind, caring, supportive friends so we can be very open and non-judgmental in the future. Because we know that mental illness doesn't discriminate. There is no set person or group or time frame for anyone to have or develop an illness, and it can be anyone at any time in their lives. We need to make sure that we are learning these strategies and ways to be supportive friends and being very open and kind and using language that is very inclusive so we don't offend, or even if we think we're making jokes, you don't know who's around that could be hearing this and being offended and maybe being hurt by it too. Right now, I'm just going to share my screen that kind of gives a little bit more of a visual to talking about mental health and mental illness. Go share screen. Awesome. So I believe right now you are seeing the Quadrant Formula. And we know that, as we said, there are people that may have a mental illness and some may not, but knowing that we all have mental health, so we're all going to end up having these thoughts of distress or being really overwhelmed, having some difficult times, not knowing maybe how we can cope. So we need to make sure that we know that mental illness can occur to anyone. Just because, let's say, Raj in the top right-hand quadrant right now doesn't have a mental illness and is feeling great, doesn't mean that he won't ever develop an illness, or doesn't mean that he's always going to be well 100%, right? We as humans and anybody who's alive is moving across this quadrant of scales and this continuum always, all the time. So wellness to distress is a continuum that changes very quickly. Some things can happen day to day, hour to hour, even minute to minute, that can affect where you are and drop you from wellness to distress or bring you from distress to wellness. And the other scale too, horizontal, the blue one, is no illness to illness. That one is harder to move back and forth on, But we do know that there are people who end up in a place of no illness. Maybe they were diagnosed with anxiety or depression, and they no longer meet that criteria and don't have that diagnosis. Whatever the reason is, though, that we as humans are looking at mental health and mental illness, we need to make sure that we are incorporating it all. And knowing that people with mental illnesses are actually in the top left-hand quadrant most of the time. That is someone who has an illness and is doing well, in a place of wellness, functioning just as well as someone who doesn't have that illness. Knowing that, yes, there are some times where you're going to be affected, you have an illness or no illness and end up in a place of distress, but knowing that we can be moving all around this quadrant kind of form, and knowing that we can't really just be focused on people with mental illnesses as negative and making jokes and seeing how they are when they're struggling, when really we don't know who could be having an illness, and we really want to make sure that we're not making assumptions or judgments, because there are people who could be doing just as fine as someone who doesn't have an illness. And we know that someone could end up in a place of no illness, but is feeling a high degree of distress. And if they're feeling this degree of distress for a very, very long period of time, there are other factors that could come into play that could then lead to an illness. So we really don't know who, but making sure that what either side of that continuum we're on, if we end up in a place of distress, to reach out, get some help and support, and make sure that we are doing what we need to do to be in a place of wellness. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And I'm going to go back to our presentation. Okay, and this is where you as supportive friends can really come into play and be a big part. You are in a very important role in the mental health recovery process. All too often, people respond negatively or dismissively when someone discloses that they might be struggling or dealing with a mental illness or a mental health concern. And it's important to remember that mental illnesses are just as real and important as physical illnesses, right? And that person can't just snap out of it and, oh, don't worry about it. If you leave it, you're just going to get better, right? We do know that sometimes that's what we say because we ourselves are nervous, or it's a lot. It's very different. And sometimes it is scary to have these conversations and we just don't know how to react. But if we are unsure how to react to when a friend or someone that we know discloses that they're struggling, it's very helpful to think of how you would react in that same situation if they told you about a physical illness, right? And also to make sure that how would you want someone to respond if you were reaching out and sharing this very big, important piece of information with them. Sometimes we just haven't had that conversation first, right? So we want to make sure that we know what to look for and what to notice when a friend might be struggling. So there are some signs that we want to be aware of, and trying to tell the difference, though, between what expected behaviors are and what might be the actual signs of a mental illness isn't always easy, especially during this time of confusion and the pandemic that is going on. There's already so much irregularity in our lives and that we're experiencing. So there's no easy test that can let someone know, yes, this person has a mental illness or this person doesn't, and they're just sad or they're just stressed out, right? We know that people are going to experience sadness and stressful experiences and things that go on in their lives that will push them down to this place of distress. Could lead to an illness or not, we don't know. So we just want to be aware of noticing when anyone might be struggling with anything, because you can't just say, oh, yep, well, that is just one little bit of sadness, or it's just a breakup with a partner and they're fine, they'll be good. Because honestly, we don't know what that could do to someone and what other things could come into play that could potentially then lead to an illness. So we know that each illness has its own symptoms, which is a whole nother topic to talk straight about mental illness and disorders. But we are going to talk about the common signs that teens and youth might show, and that can include some of these following. So the first is talking about like wanting to die or threatening suicide. It's not a joke. Even if someone says, oh, I'm only saying this as a joke, or even talking about it and you do think that it's serious, we're going to take nothing as a joke and making sure that that is one thing we're reaching out to someone for help with immediately, a trusted adult. Some other things that we can pick up on, though, from our friends or people around us are those changes in behavior, right? And that they're not regular. So they're like extreme opposites or extreme kind of like roller coaster kind of mood swings, things that you wouldn't normally see from that friend, right? Making sure you're putting it in the relation of that person. So if you think, oh my gosh, they're withdrawing. They've spent 3 days in their room and they're just playing video games. That's it. They must be experiencing an illness. When that person's like, no, like I'm just an introvert. I enjoy playing video games, or I'm trying to beat this level, like, or I just needed some time alone. That's very different. But maybe if that person's doing that for a very long period of time, a couple weeks, leading into months maybe, or even if that person was always out and social and then they just kind of flipped and went to the extreme opposite. Something just to kind of keep in mind, right? Noticing changes in appearance for people. They kind of don't care anymore about what they're wearing or taking care of themselves, kind of the hygiene part of it. Maybe noticing their eating, sleeping, exercise patterns. And that could be either too little of any one of these or too much and doing it excessively too on the other end as well. Maybe they are becoming more angry or irritable, right? Kind of like moody. Their tempers are changing. They might be picking fights, lashing out at people verbally, physically. And that's, again, not just to say like, oh, I slammed the door. Oh, well, that must mean you're angry, which means, oh, must be mental illness. No, we do know that everyone's going to have feelings of frustration, anger, exhaustion, emotions, right? We might be very frustrated and mad at some people, but it's noticing these things and picking up on it constantly, or even when they're lashing out on people that they might normally not have done. And you're just like, that just seems a little odd, like it's out of character for you, right? Potentially, you might be noticing that someone is engaging in risky behaviors, and that can include drug or alcohol abuse or misuse, or even trying things that you think, wow, like you wouldn't have ever done this before. Like, why are you trying this? Maybe getting, again, into more fights, maybe online shopping or gambling. They are engaging in more risky behaviors like drinking and driving, speeding, maybe even like cliff jumping, which you think, oh yeah, this is so fun, but maybe doing it in a dangerous spot, or just their whole attitude of I don't care what happens to me. If there's self-harm in any way, of any form, if someone's causing harm to themselves, then that is a key thing to pick up on as well. And again, people might not be openly sharing this, but you might be noticing things. With that withdrawal and isolation we talked about. So again, yeah, that's not just, oh, I need some time in my room alone, or I did break up with a partner and I'm upset and sad and crying for a week. It's noticing it consistently for a very long period of time that actually interrupts their daily functioning and their ability to do the daily routines as well. And then maybe even what they're saying is keywords like, what's the point? Oh, I'm not going to be around for this. I don't really care anymore. Everything sucks. It's the worst, right? Sometimes people may even give away possessions, or they might be doing poor performance in school or clubs or any extracurriculars that you participate in with them. So we did just mention a lot, right? And that is a mouthful. And you might think, okay, well, you just told me so many signs and they're all over the place and I don't really know which ones to look for or zone in on. So we can go a little bit further than this list. And the really key things to remember are 4 things that you look for, right? It's things that you would see, things that you hear from a person, things that you sense, and things that you learn about in their life or their past situations, things that are going on that might help you pick up on these flags. And these are kind of like little warning flags to say like, oh, okay, they might be struggling because of this, right? So when we break it down, it doesn't seem as big of a list and so many things to watch out for. So if we straight up say, okay, what are the things that you see? What are those signs that you're picking up, the things that you can see in your friend or someone, a family member or someone in the community, right? That they're being more careless. Their hygiene, they are withdrawing. I see them taking drugs or alcohol. I see them giving away possessions. I see their attitude, their temper rising, they're getting in fights. I see them not participating in things, right? Those are the things we see. Here, we already talked about a couple of them, right? Hearing someone say, I'm alone. There's no one there that cares. I have no one to go to. I feel maybe like the I feel words that they're saying, or I'm a burden. I feel like there's no escape. I'm very trapped right now. Even saying, I feel depressed. I feel sad. And again, that's lasting for a longer period of time, right? That negative talk just, again, we all know that there's people that are going to complain and there's things that we're going to complain about in our lives, but constant negative talk, not seeing the happiness or the positivity for a very long period of time, maybe saying things like, oh, this sucks. I'm always getting bad marks, or, you know, this is the absolute worst that could ever happen. And then even hearing them say those words about like, I wish I was dead, and that's not a joke, so serious, or what they think is joking, it's not. Then the things that we sense, right? That's our gut feeling and our intuition. Sometimes you say, okay, I can't really put like a word to this. I can't put a sign. I don't think there's no real reason, but I have a feeling, and I think that they're struggling. There's something going on. I sense that they don't want to talk about it. I sense that they're hiding something, that there is something big there, right? Maybe you sense their feelings of hopelessness. Maybe you sense that they feel ashamed, or they don't want to be a guilt or a burden to someone. Maybe you even sense that anxiety, those anxious feelings, the embarrassed, the emotions, the anger, the pain, and you can sense that from maybe things they're giving off, or even just being around them in their presence, right? And then there's the things that we can learn about. So what has been going on, what happened in the past, maybe that could lead to someone that might be struggling or dealing with a lot. So abuse of any kind, maybe rejection, being bullied by people, people that they are close to, people just in like social media, or people in the school that they're not even friends with, but it can go either way. Losses, so someone who there might have been a death of a family member, a friend, a pet, someone in their community, someone even as a celebrity or social media that they like look up to or idolize, that could take a big toll on someone as well. The stress of peer pressure, maybe there's the stress of failure, or maybe they did fail at something, or something didn't work out, something that they hoped that they were going to get. Maybe there's family conflict, and there's divorce or remarrying, there's just arguing, things that are going on with friends, things that are going on with their own personal life, extended family. Maybe there's physical illness, maybe there already is a mental illness as well, right? So both of those could tie in to someone struggling, and maybe they don't know that they have an illness at this time, right? But there's something going on. Finances and money can cause people a lot of stress and worry. Big transitions, changes, moving, relationships, jobs, school, all of these things are things that we would learn about from a person through their life situations, from what they tell us, from what we see because we're friends, or we see them in the community. And even maybe there's a sense of like a loss of themselves, and they're trying to figure out who they are. There's maybe like identity losses, and they're just kind of in that process of figuring out who they are as a person, right? That can be something that we also learn about. So these are things that we can pick up on, right? And it's easier to break them down into the categories. Like, oh, I noticed this. So, okay, where could this fit? See, hear, sense, or learn about. So it's not just, wow, there's a huge list of things that I should be aware and looking out for. And some people may only have one sign, and you think, yes, immediately, we have to get them help right away. Or they could have maybe 5 or 6, and you still think, okay, they're pretty resilient. Yeah, because let's say there was a death in their family and they're now sad, or they talk about, I'm crying a lot, or I don't want to be around people. But then when we put it into context, okay, that might not be an illness, right? So again, knowing the person, having these conversations, and kind of figuring out where they are. So really making sure that we're asking them, right? We have to see their response. We can't judge. We can't assume that we know what's going on for a person. So now we'll move on to how can we help? If we picked up on some of these signs and symptoms, and we think that a friend or someone that we know might be struggling or dealing with something, whether it's their mental health or not, what can we do about that, right? And we have a list here, and you can try one of these, try all of these, but making sure that you keep it very simple and doing what you are comfortable with to try to reach out for help. So you just want to be there for that person, right? But being a friend, what would you want in this situation? And try to do that then for that person. Try not to show panic, like shock, fear. Maybe they've disclosed something to you, or maybe you've even picked up and noticed something and you're just like, oh my gosh, or you're scared, or this is bad. And right away we use those words like, no, this is not good. Let's not do this. Well, then they don't feel maybe that they can come talk to you. They don't feel that you're ready to have this conversation, so they wouldn't feel comfortable either. Because we do know that it is big, and that's okay though. We'll talk about a little bit later that if this is something that's too big for you, you don't have to be the person to strictly like have the conversations with your friends or deal with it, but making sure that you are reaching out and talking to someone. Don't just walk away. Even if it is big and scary, again, say, You can even say that, wow, like, yeah, this is big and this is a lot. I'm here for you. I'm not walking away, but where can we go, or who else can we get to help us? Asking them what you can do to help them, right? We can't assume we know. We can't give them advice. You're also not counselors or therapists. You cannot do the diagnosing or the giving advice and therapy to fix and solve all the problems and what's going on in their lives. You can just say, what can I do? Maybe they only need you to be there as a friend. Maybe they just need you to say, you know what? I just need you to come hang out with me, go to a movie, play some video games, just like what we would normally be doing, right? That's what I need from you. And you say, okay, yeah, I can do that. Focusing on what's strong in a person rather than what's wrong, right? Like, we do know that there are other awesome, great things that are go on in a person's life, and then hoping to give them hope that way. And not just saying like, oh yeah, you have other great things going for you. Don't worry about this, or you'll be fine, it'll blow over, right? Not so much saying that, but also knowing that, you know what, this isn't fun. This is not good for you. I can understand maybe how you could feel this way, but do look at all these amazing, great things. So, you know what, you have all that. Let's focus on this. So this little piece of distress can get you back to feeling well again and in this place of wellness. Maybe you want to share how you're feeling, not to take over the conversation and make it all about you, but just so they know that they're not alone, maybe that there's someone that they can relate to, and also sharing your feelings about how thankful and happy you are that they reached out to you, that they feel that they can come and talk to you. Building people up in a positive way. So not getting too involved in toxic relationships or heated discussions or anything too that goes on social media or in person, because as we said, you don't know what language you're using or what you're doing that might be a joke, or other negative people that are surrounding you. And people with mental illnesses, or maybe when they're stressed or struggling with something, they might see that as negative too, and it just adds to their feelings of distress and negativity and hopelessness. And we don't want that either, because the more positive talk, the more positive people that you're around is going to lift you and bring you up as well. And that just means being a good friend, being a good person, right? Because we don't have to be super close to these people to be able to help, or to be kind and being aware when someone is struggling. We can still get other people help that aren't our best and closest friends or family members, right? We hear of those stories when someone says, yeah, it wasn't a family member, it wasn't my best friend, it was some random stranger that just bypassed me and said this comment, or send me a positive note out of the blue. And that's the things that they hold on to and to remember. And those are the people that really help them. So you don't know who you could be helping. So that's really important. We also want to make sure that we are watching our language too. Really important, I mentioned earlier. So I'm also going to show you a tiny little language chart. So I'm going to share my screen with you right now again. And hopefully you can see this chart and knowing what helps and maybe what hurts, like what's going to be harmful to someone. Saying it's all in your head, right? You can also say, I know that you have a real illness and that's what's causing these thoughts and feelings, right? Like not being dismissive. Oh, we all go through times like this. As I said, don't be dismissive and saying like, oh, you're fine, you'll get over it. But saying, you know what? Yeah, I have experienced this, or I do know someone and I may not be able to understand you perfectly, but I do care about you and want to help you. Maybe saying things like, well, what do you want me to do? I can't do anything. I can't help you or fix you. But then, as we had mentioned, what can I do to help you right now? What do you want from me? I care for you and I'm going to do what you need, right? Telling them again, as we said, to snap out of it or look on the bright side. They may not believe it now. And that's what we can say too, is the way you're feeling is valid. You have these feelings and thoughts, and that's okay. But you know what? Your feelings will change. And you may not believe it now, but there are really good things. Or look at these awesome little bits about you, right? And that's where you're building them up and focusing on the good things and what's strong in a person. Not telling them to be fine and stop worrying, saying you're not alone, I'm here for you. Again, not here's my advice, but talk to me, I'm listening, which we will get into as a step in a couple minutes. And then what's wrong with you? Or there's something wrong, you're bad, this is terrible, shouldn't you be better by now? And just saying, we'll get through this together, I'm here for you. Everybody is different, right? So making sure that we know that if we're saying these negative things or these things that are harmful and not helping, they're going to hurt a person, and they're eventually going to feel more guilty and anxious about what's happening around them. And they may not want to reach out and talk to anybody at all, when we do know that they do need help and support. to make sure that they're getting the help they need and staying in a place of wellness. Okay, stop sharing that screen. Okay, so now we move on. So these are the things that we can do to be good, helpful, kind, and supportive friends, but we can also ask them directly, right? We want to make sure that we're doing, again, the things that are comfortable for us, and what's going to work for someone may not work for others. But when we talk about asking a friend what you can do for them, it's a lot simpler than even talking about it in terms of mental illness and mental health related. And you don't need to elaborate. You can start by just simply seeing if they're okay, right? Be straightforward. It's always better than to jump around the topic. And if you're wrong and it isn't about mental health or an illness, then that's the best case scenario. And we do know that, okay, you know what though? I did still notice something else might be going on. Let's get you the help you need with what's happening in your life right now, right? And it will, when you do, it'll also show that you're picking up on signs, and that really shows that you're there for them and that you care and that you want to reach out to help them. And people will really, really keep that in mind, and they'll know and recognize that even if they don't verbally tell you that they're happy that you're there. And it also just won't show that you're stupid. It'll show that you're paying attention and that you care about them. Because sometimes people might think like, oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, they think that I think they have an illness. No, you're just picking up on signs that something may not be going well, and I want to help you. So again, the words that we can use too, we don't have to say, hey, you have mental illness. I think you might, there's something going on, right? Because again, we can't diagnose, and we just want to make sure we're talking to it how we would talk to anyone. Hey, how's it going? What's up? How are you doing? Using these types of everyday language and questions that we would ask anybody, right? But making sure that we might be including some of those signs that we picked up on from earlier. That way that they can't skirt around the issue. They can't shut you down right away. That they know that you noticed, and they can't really get around not answering, right? So, well, I noticed you stopped coming to class. Or I noticed, hey, like you haven't answered my last 5 texts, and that's like 2 weeks that we haven't talked. Like, what's going on? Why? Right? Kind of asking these open-ended questions so they can't just say, yes, no, I'm fine, done, shut down too. And then someone may start to talk to you and open up, and then they may not. And again, we have another kind of key tip if they don't answer, they don't want to talk about it at all. But if someone does start opening up and sharing, right now is your time to listen. You can even say those words, I'm listening, I'm here, do you want to talk about it, right? Being supportive. Maybe also too, you're like, uh-oh, I just opened this can of worms and they're just going to talk, but maybe they haven't talked to anyone. And if you have the time, give them that time. But also make sure that you know when it's time to include another adult and someone that can really help them and go about starting to deal with whatever's going on for them. Because you'll be a great friend and a debrief and someone that they can chat with, but if there's something more going on, you definitely need to get extra help. So what makes a really good listener is not changing the subject, right? Especially if you ask the question, hey, what's going on? And then you're like, oh, I don't actually want to hear the answer. Well, we can't be like that, right? That's not good, caring, supportive friends. So giving them your full attention, not checking your phone constantly, not checking the time, not saying, whoops, I gotta go. Although we do know that sometimes if someone's talking for hours on end, you do actually have to go. And you can say, I'm so glad that you felt you could share this. I know that you have a lot more to say. I do have to get to work, or I have to go to bed now because we need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves and doing the things we need to do. But then saying, okay, well, how about we have someone else come into this conversation, right? Giving them time and space. I know that people don't like those awkward silences, but if we're just sitting there and letting them have space to think about what they want to say and get the words out, it might be very hard for them. And if we keep jumping in with things, they might not actually get a chance to talk. So not pressuring or rushing them, those nods, smiling, eye contact, when appropriate too, because we don't want to just sit there and stare at them with wide eyes, not blinking. We want to kind of give them that space, that comfortability, not making it look like you're sitting behind like a desk, like an interview, kind of like what's going on, arms crossed, right? That kind of open, comfortable stance that you are there, you're here, you're listening, and not interrupting or giving them that advice again. So we did mention this may be a lot. This may be too big and too much for you to take in right now. And that's okay. And this is where reaching out is so, so, so important. We need to make sure that we're saying those words. I know what you're saying. I am here and I'm listening. This is a lot. This is very important and big. And I think that we need some extra help from an adult, right? We can offer to go with that person. We can call someone to come to where you are if you guys are together You can even say, I'll go with you. I'll stand outside the door if you're going to talk to your parents, or if you want me to come in, I'll be there, right? What do you want from me? How can I help you? So again, these tips may work, but they also may not work when someone just says, nope, I'm fine. Nope, nothing's wrong. Forget it. Like they just shut you down. And then there's your gut feelings, right? So you're still sensing that there's something that is going on, but they're not talking about it. We're definitely going to get help anyways. So I'm going to pass it over to Kristin, who actually is a youth from the Youth Talk and has some experience with supporting a friend. So Kristin, I'm going to pass it over to you and you can share your story with us.
Sure. So I was in, I think maybe it was the end of 7th grade or the end of 8th grade. I had a friend who was showing very obvious signs that she needed more help than any of us were able to give her. So me and another friend of mine went to the counselor at our elementary school. I can't remember what they're called exactly. And we just spoke to her and said, this is what we're seeing, and we think that she really needs some external help because she's going around telling everyone things that may be harmful to other people, and she may be harmful to herself as well. And she did end up getting the help that she needed, and she lives happy life now.
So how did she react when she found out that you went to your guidance counselor or your CYC or CYW because it was grade school? Yeah, and how did she react to that?
She actually didn't ever find out. We did ask the CYC to be confidential and just say that somebody told us this, and we just want to make sure everything's okay. And she did keep that confidential for us.
That's really great. So that's good that you got the help anyways. And the CYC said, yes, I will keep it private and confidential. I won't make it known, because what is the point in saying, oh, this person came and told me, right? The main thing is to get that person the help they need. So it doesn't matter where it's coming from. And you did your part. It was amazing. You were that, as you said too, like whether it was a friend or an acquaintance, you were that supportive person, and you then left it in the CYC or the guidance counselor's hands for them, right? That trusted adult that can provide more support that you said you couldn't. Sometimes this isn't always the case. And sometimes we do run the risk of someone being mad, right? Or frustrated, or we're not friends anymore. I can't believe you did that, and mad at you for going and getting that help. But we do know that they'd be struggling and they'd be alone if you didn't help them anyway. So it's so much better to have a friend mad or hate you, or even for a little bit, because generally we would hope that you wouldn't lose a friend in the end over it, than have them struggling or causing harm to themselves or someone else, right? We can't, even in good faith, as a good supportive friend or person, ignore things and pretend that everything's fine, right? Because that's not a real friendship. So we want to make sure that everyone is staying well and getting that help, because they can't when they're internally struggling. So how did you feel, Kristin, personally going without her? Especially because you said it wasn't a close friend. It wasn't something that maybe you could just have a conversation and ask openly what's going on to her. So how did you feel about getting the help? And again, not behind her back, but getting someone the help they needed.
It was fine. I mean, it was a little bit nerve-wracking for a while, like for the first little bit. But in the end, I was really glad that we could be there for that person, and that everything just worked out in the end for her.
That is really, really good. So you didn't try talking to her ahead of time?
I may have, but again, we were younger, and I didn't have all the information that I do now, to like guide me in what to do. So I just kind of went with my gut and was like, this is bigger than anything that I could ever help her with. So I turned to adults that I trusted.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. And that is something that's so important. It is okay if you don't know enough, or you don't have the information or the education. And even if you do, sometimes it still is too big and too scary, and that's okay. Sometimes it could even be, I just heard this talk series, so I should know what to do. But when it comes down to it, we don't know how we're going to react to that situation. So we may not be comfortable, and that's okay. But as Kristin said, is we knew something is going on and she needed help anyways. So we are going to get that help. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. Right. And it is also okay to have boundaries for yourself. So knowing you best and what you can handle, it does not mean you're a bad friend. And Kristin, you said that may not even have been a close friend, it was an acquaintance, but you are a good person for going and getting that help. Sometimes it's too much for us in our own mental health. Sometimes we do have a lot going on that we just can't take on someone else's like life experience and situations and what they're going through, right? That whole phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. It is so true. And we need to make sure that we're in a good place mentally, physically, in a good space, that we do have the time to give to that person. But if we don't, we go and get that help anyways. And that's so important. And when we did mention, sometimes we do ask friends, hey, you know what? I think that we need some help. Like, thanks for sharing. And they say, nope, I don't want to go get help. Don't tell anyone. Well, we can't promise secrecy. We can be discreet though and say, I'm not going to tell anyone else. I need to talk to this person, or I'll go with you, and doing those kind of things too. They, again, may be mad, they may be pissed off, but you're saying, I care about you and you deserve this help. You can say things like, I am going to do this anyways. I would really hope that you'd want to come with me, but we need to get help. This needs to happen because I want to make sure you're staying safe, right? So that's the most important thing. So making sure that you are just reaching out to, and we do have, again, in a couple minutes, ways that you can actually do that too. Thanks, Kristin, so much for sharing that story with us as well. Making sure too that we can still check in with them, and Kristin mentioned that she's not maybe best friends with that person, but passing them in the hall if you're in school, or even seeing her now saying like, how's it going? What's going on, right? So doing these things still to make sure that we're supporting people and encouraging them and being positive around them. So sometimes we want to talk about what happens if you're not in person. You don't pick up on these signs in person. You're not having these conversations one-to-one, face-to-face with people. What can you do? What if someone disclosed some big information to you, or they're struggling, or a mental health concern, and they're via social media or text or on the phone, right? So no matter what communication that you're using, it's still so important. Even if you say, shoot, well, I could get together with them in 3 days, but no, you're like, this has to happen and I have to ask them now. I need to make sure they're okay, because maybe they're posting something that's concerning, or a story, a picture, a caption. Maybe if it is something on the phone that they're just mentioning and you're having a conversation, it's not face to face, you're like, you know what, this can't wait. Ask anyways, right? You're asking how they're doing. You're getting that sense, that feeling of what's going on, no matter how they respond, right? If they say, I'm fine, then you're like, ooh, you're not fine. Or then they might chat with you on the phone, and that's okay too. So if they are on text or Messenger or Snapchat, or however you're doing it, ask, do you think we could have a phone conversation? Do you think we could have a face-to-face conversation? What are you doing right now? Can I come over? Again, if that works for you and you're able to actually do that, right? You don't want to push someone who's struggling to do more that they can do as well. And you also don't want to make sure that you're not pushing yourself to do more than you can handle. So again, if they say no to all of that, then you have to continue just with texting, then that's okay, right? Because you need to make sure you're doing, but keeping all the information that they're saying, maybe screenshotting it, maybe writing down notes while you're having these conversations, and asking again those open-ended questions like, where are you? Who are you with? Sorry, those aren't open-ended questions, but getting to know more information, right? So yeah, where are you? Who are you with? Well, what's going on? Why did you post this? I noticed this. How are you feeling? What's going on? Is there anything I can help with, right? So again, keeping those signs that we had noticed, picking up on, and mentioning those as well, because you can do that through social media too. So, you stopped coming to class, or maybe this summer you canceled on 2 of our hangouts, and now I see you posted this. I'm concerned. Using those feelings of showing that you care, that you're worried, not, again, this is bad, you need help, but just being mindful of our language, saying, I think that maybe this is important, that we should get someone else in here. So again, as I had mentioned, you can say things to your friend to make it not look like you're going behind their back. I understand that you don't want to talk now. I'm here for you. Whenever you want to open up and chat, just so you know, hey, you know what? I know you don't want to talk to me, but here's some things that I found. Here's some resources, or here's another number that maybe you can call. I'm just going to leave these here in these websites if you want to use them at any point, right? Or you don't want to talk to me now, I'll check back in tomorrow. So I'm going to still look up, I'm still going to check up on you afterwards regardless, right? And then again, sometimes you are having to go to that person to get extra help no matter what. Like as Kristin said, it was kind of immediate for someone's safety, that you have to say, you know what, I'm just letting you know that I know that you don't want me to reach out. I know that you don't want to reach out, but I have to do this anyways. So just giving you a heads up so they're not like blindsided, right? So mentioning that, and you can say whatever words that are comfortable to you too, right? Even saying, you know what, if you don't want to contact someone, who can I contact for you? Who can we contact together? Can we do like a 3-way call? Can I get another person into the video chat, right? Maybe even too, if you are very worried for their safety, then instead of texting, saying, can we just video chat? So that way you can still see them on screen and that you know where they are. You kind of pick up on things that are going on around them too. So I do know that, Kristin, if you want to come back, I know you have a story, experience that happened to you as well, for you getting someone help and the idea that, you know what, maybe they were angry, or you thought maybe they'd be angry and they didn't reply, and you're like, well, I have to do this anyways.
Hello.
No, oh, there you are. You're back. Great.
So I had another friend who was like a really, really close friend to me, and we were just kind of texting, and she had recently been showing signs that I had noticed, and so I was just having a light conversation with her about it, that maybe she should mention it to her family members, and they will definitely be there for her and get her help, because I'm close with her family as well and knew them well enough to know. And she was like, yeah, maybe, but it's not that big of a deal right now. And then a few days later, she like just basically was like, I don't be here anymore, like, and was threatening her life. And so I turned to my mom, and I was freaking out, obviously, as a younger person. And my mom took the initiative, and she picked up the phone and called her house and just said, this is what my daughter just received from someone in your family. Please check up on them and make sure that they get kind of the help that they need. And yeah, she did get the help that she needed. She saw a professional and things like that, and things turned around. And I'm really glad that I was like, Mom, please help me, because I don't know what to do. So if you're stuck in that situation, even after seeing this, and you're like, okay, now I'm panicked, always turn to somebody else that can be more calm and think more clearly than you can.
That's so important. Again, thank you so much for sharing that piece of your life and that story with us. And that's something that's really big that you're always going to remember too. And I'm glad that you said, yeah, I panicked. Yeah, you're young. Or even if you have this information, it might just get thrown right out of your head and you're like, uh-oh, I have no thoughts. What do I do? So you turn to someone you trust instantly and said, hey, we need some help. This is what's going on. And it was so good of you, as you had already said, like, I already picked up and had a conversation with her a couple days ago, said it was fine. It's not a big deal right now. But look at where even those couple days landed. And now it was immediate. So now even knowing that if someone says, oh, yeah, I'm going through something, but it's not a big deal, or we don't have to worry about it yet. Well, yeah, maybe in that situation now, looking back, we're going to get the help that you need right away. But again, you said you were young. You couldn't even have known that. And what you did do is so great. And those are the things that you need to remember and say, yes, I reached out and I got the help for that person. And it, as I said earlier, it's not about keeping secrets, or they might not be your friend, but saying, yep, this is so important. And it doesn't always even need to be the extreme case of someone threatening their life or causing self-harm, but even just struggling in general, because as we said, someone may be experiencing something differently and you just don't know, and we can't tell by someone's situations. Or yeah, they may be okay right now, but then something else could just happen that could instantly just drop them down even further, and be like, yep, now I'm just in this extreme place of overwhelmness and I can't cope. So that was so great and so important. And I'm glad that you reached out to someone too that you trust. And that person, which was your mom, so luckily you have a great relationship. Some people may not have awesome relationships with their immediate family, but knowing someone that's going to take you seriously, that's not going to dismiss your feelings or thoughts and that's it, like, oh, well, okay, like we'll check back on your friend in a week or two, right? Because we don't know. So your mom immediately was like, yep, you know what? I will do this. So also getting parents to be informed of things to look for and who to go to in those situations. That's really good. Thank you, Kristin, for that again. So now we move on to the idea of getting help, right? Who can you talk to? It could be anybody. The idea is that it is a trusted adult because again, you as friends are great, but you can't do more for helping someone. So CYWs, CYCs, teachers, guidance counselors, coaches, program leaders, group leaders, principals, these people in your schools, right? That's a big group. Right now, we know it's summer too, right? Or when it is holiday break and you're not in school, then who do you go to? Parents, guardians, aunts, uncles, family, friends that are older that you do trust, outside activity coaches, program leaders, group leaders, church leaders, honest doctors you can go to, walk-ins, you can go call numbers too. There's so many. So it's just knowing who you would go to that you would feel comfortable, that you know that you would feel heard and trusted adults that will get the help that you need. The big thing too is to not get discouraged. Let's say if you did reach out to someone and you think you didn't feel heard or they didn't get the help you needed or you, and then saying, well, you know what, I'm going to keep going. You have to keep advocating and asking and finding that trusted adult that will help you because there are so many people out there that are willing and wanting to help. The thing too is knowing that what we're saying and what we're talking about and how to reach out could also be for yourself. It doesn't have to be just if you're noticing signs and wanting to get help for a friend or someone you know, but also if you want to reach out, who would you go to, right? If you might be struggling with things too. And how to start the conversation can honestly be exactly how you'd start a conversation with a friend. Be very honest and straightforward if you were talking to them as well and just say, hey, teacher, parent, friend, I'm worried about this person. This is what I've noticed about this person. Giving the information, let's say if you were behind text saying this is where they are, this is what they told me, this is the post, showing that, having kind of that information there and ready and saying, I'm worried and concerned, I think that they need more help, right? So it's really, really important. We also know that you can call Kids Help Phone. Kids Help Phone also has a texting app. You can go to Here 24/7, which is the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week kind of crisis line through CMHA. For anything though, if you're in crisis, if you just need some advice or for a friend or family member saying, I don't know what to do, please help me. Like I need some more help. And you're not remembering this 1 hour session that we just had talk series, right? And then there's also great apps. This may not be for someone in crisis in the moment, but someone who might need to deal with a little bit more, but maybe they're not ready to reach out, but the resources that you could help provide a friend to say like, well, there's some awesome, great apps to help with managing anxiety or to help with your depression. CMHA Ontario has put out 2 programs, Bounce Back and Big White Wall. And these are really great for people who might be experiencing mild anxiety or depression and just other mental health concerns. There's community supports, there's worksheets for people to go to, there's like a board where you can talk to the people in the community and get the help that you need there. Some great resources as well. So CMHA, we also have Here for Help. So here and then for the number help.ca, which has great links and resources specifically for youth as well, broken down into categories. So lots of different resources. The last thing that I really wanted to mention, and I know that it is just over an hour, so we've been doing this for 1 hour and 4 minutes, but this is really important, is to stay supportive and continue being that good, caring, helpful friend or acquaintance or just community member, right? So remembering that you know your friend, your loved one, your family member best, and they are not their illness. It is only part of their lives, right? That doesn't make who they are overall. Making sure that it's also your goal to ensure that other people know that well. And no. This is just like for me, like that's Jessica who has an illness, but it doesn't define who she is. That's not my label, my identity, right? There is just so much more to that person. Checking in with them. right? If you want to check in with them on how they're doing mental health wise, or just checking in with them, hey, what's up? How's it going? Just continuing that friendship with them. You don't always have to be talking about the illness part of it or their struggles or if they're getting the help, because they may say, yeah, you know what, thanks for getting me that help. I'm talking to someone. So they don't want to have that conversation with you anymore because they're getting the help they need. They want to go and ride bikes and play video games and go get ice cream and go to the beach and study for tests together. Like they want to do those regular things and keeping being a friend that way, which is really, really important. Letting them know that you're still here whenever. You know, it didn't just happen once and you're like, okay, great, we had a conversation, never again, but I'm still here. If anything else happens, let me know. Trying to understand them by educating yourself more, by educating others, reading about mental health, mental illnesses, giving yourself that knowledge, attending webinars, listening to seminars like this, always bettering yourself and giving yourself more tips and strategies, which is really important. And a big thing too is also taking care of yourself. So to be a friend who might be supporting someone who might be struggling without knowing it, or even after you do know these tips, it's still very hard for you. And you may need to reach out and talk to someone for yourself for a debrief on, look what I just went through. Making sure that, again, your cup is so full and that you're doing self-care practices and making sure you're staying in this place of wellness before you can reach out and support someone else too, right? It's really, really important. We do know that some people have been wanting more tips on managing anxiety in general, and that's what came up in this talk. And self-care and coping and anxiety and stress are such a big range of topics that we may need to do another session too. So stay tuned for that, because we'll probably definitely be doing that as well, especially during this pandemic. We know that people are coping differently, and we want to make sure that we're giving best practices as well. And again, making sure too that wherever you're doing, being supportive for someone is different, right? It may not be the exact same that someone else is doing, or what worked for someone else or what works for you may not work for them. So trying to see what they want, talking to people privately or maybe openly, being their friend and just doing regular hangouts versus maybe talking more about mental health and mental illness with them. And they might appreciate that. So just making sure that you are staying that supportive friend too. And we do have a couple tips that we can post with this when we do post the recording on reasons that people may not reach out to get help, but also steps that you can take when you're asking your friend, or like the little tips and tricks that you can use for when you're reaching out and having these conversations with that trusted adult. So that is really important. That we'll also just kind of put up there, but for time's sake, I won't go through them. So that's it for this. I'm going to give it back to Kristin now.
Thanks so much for providing us with this information and giving us all these great tips. If anyone does have any questions, you could leave them like in the comments or reach out to us, whatever.
Yes, super important. If you do have any questions after this or regarding this, please don't hesitate to reach out in the comments. Make sure you know that it's not monitored 24/7. So if it is a crisis situation, go right to here 24/7, which that number too that is always in our videos, but it is 1-844-437-3247. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can reach out to YouthTALK at cmhaww.ca. You can reach out directly to me, JSCHUMACHER at cmhaww.ca. You can direct message us on our social media. We have our YouTube channel, we have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, right? Connect with us directly. Again, not crisis lines and not monitored. So make sure that you're getting the key person that you are looking to reach out to. And again, Here 24/7 is for Waterloo, Wellington. But if you're looking for crisis support for Dufferin, it is 1-888-811-2222. Someone is there and they want to help you. Again, I just want to mention that there are some questions that we didn't get to, just because this is such a big, deep topic too, that we had a lot of content for. Again, I gave you my emails. Please reach out to me. I know that someone had signed up for this that wants to help supporting a daughter with bipolar disorder. And I do have a lot more information on that and family supports and different resources and websites and places for you to go specifically. So please, please reach out to me and then I can forward you there, because maybe this didn't relate to you or wasn't relevant right now, but there are more information on that. And we had someone else wanting to know more about healthy relationships and friendships and being a good person overall. So we will probably get to another topic. So stay tuned and keep checking out the talk series. They're Wednesdays at 3 and they're all over our social medias.
Again, thank you so much. I know that sometimes this is hard to discuss, but it's really important and information we will use either now or in the future. Thank you again to Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Youth Action Committee for letting us run this talk series. Mostly, thank you to you for watching this. We hope that you've learned some new information, how to be a little more supportive of friends who may be dealing with mental health or struggling in general, and where to go to find help. If you're interested, next week's session is on post-secondary preparedness during the pandemic. Same time and date. Check social media sites to register and get the link to join our live Zoom. And thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.